I guess the middle schoolers. But looking at the data, I'm looking at data in terms of absolute achievement, and I'm looking at data in terms of academic trend. Both do not show good performance. So how do you articulate the improvement, but the numbers don't necessarily say the improvement? So where's the disjoint communication?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. I would just like to say that we use data cycles to inform instruction throughout, no matter what. We're always directing it from based on our data and our review, not only of the MCAP or the standardized test data, but our benchmark data as well. Sometimes those are different pieces of data that give us different amounts of information. And of course, we're looking at the 3-year trend from 17 to 19, so it may look different. We've held a lot of good work on teachers getting better at looking at data so that they can understand how to move from the data into instruction in more targeted ways. But as we look at the renewal data tables, we're calibrating standardized test scores alongside our local and more frequent assessment data. You know, things vacillate. In 2017 to 18, we outperformed Baltimore City in every area, or outperformed in general. And in 2018-19, we had underperformance. This data is a little stale, I will say, because since then we were certainly looking at doing better with data as teachers and as a staff. Even in the data that we have that you're looking at there, African American students in ELA, for example, in 2018, were scoring in the 90th percentile in the district. So the data gives us a mixed picture, perhaps, but it is also knowing it's important, or the data sources that we use to plan and to target instruction, and that we see increased growth are simply that we use a wider net of the data than simply the standardized test, but also we use that standardized test and we realize that there's vacillation from one year to the next. We're looking at those 3 years. I will say we're paying attention to it, and we're looking very much at the same time of in our data compared to Baltimore City, but in our data compared to where we would like to be. Those two things are a little bit different. We are showing that our students in algebra are showing high achievement over those 3 years' time, and getting to algebra and outperforming the 9th graders. But we still have, more to go. The data is helping us to know we're not there yet.
So you're saying that the data is mixed. I mean, you have different data than we may have. So is there some way I could see the data that you have?
We have lots of data, the iReady data, the benchmark data. We have running records every time I submit principal's student learning objectives, for example, or our teachers perform with their teachers' SLOs, where they're actually starting at the beginning of the year, where are students performing and where are they ending? They're meeting goals toward grade levels across the board. Now, of course, that's a much smaller picture because we're only looking at one thing at a time. I'd be happy to share with you, but also I think that we have presented that through our renewal process, and in many ways, we discuss that when we have our school effectiveness review as well. And in our school effectiveness review, we were talked about that we were seen to have highly effective instruction. So that process is somewhat built in, but I'm happy to share with you some more data if you would like it.
Please, I welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Are there any other questions? And I don't see any hands. Okay, thank you so much, team. Thanks for coming out tonight. Angela?
City Neighbors. Thank you, guys. Can City Neighbors Hamilton come up next? You can start when you're ready.
Okay, LaShawn is going to be sharing her screen.
It's not letting me share, sorry. Dr. Shaw, are you able to
Christian,
share?
can she be made a presenter?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened because you weren't,
Gardner.
sir, and then I think did you leave and come back? No, you're Miss Gardner. You're already listed as a presenter, so I'm not sure why you can't share your screen.
Me either. Sorry, I'm not able to share. I'm trying.
Sorry
Ms.
about
Gardner, is there anyone else on your team who can share their screen?
Yep, I will try.
Okay, thank you.
It's not.
It's not letting you? Do we have this presentation? Is it easy enough to email?
Yep.
Okay.
Who should we email it to?
Christian, can you accept this?
that.
for
Sure.
us? And would you mind, because, well, let me ask Angela, while we're waiting for that email to come in, should we go to the next school and then come back? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We can do that.
Okay. So team, just, we'll get Christian queued up with your presentation and we'll come back to you all, okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, City Springs Elementary Middle.
Good evening. Can you try to make me the presenter?
One moment.
And if you can't, it's okay, because I think you all have the one pager that we sent yesterday. I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll begin then. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Santelises, and commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words about our beloved City Springs and to answer any questions you may have. I want to say that the staff at City Springs have developed through the years into an incredibly talented group, and as a community, we are always trying to get better. The work that goes into renewal can clarify areas of focus, and we know that demonstrating success for students with disabilities and raising math achievement will be at the top of our list of priorities in coming years. BCP is blessed with outstanding principals, and all of whom would agree that the newly minted distinguished principal, Rhonda Ricchetta, sets the standard for commitment and talent. So it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to her.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, Dr. Santelises, Madam Chair, and commissioners. I want to spend my time telling you specifically how we plan to address our priority areas Laura mentioned. Regarding the growth of our students with disabilities, we do have a plan. One of our special educators is participating in the SEAL program, Special Education Instructional Leader Program, which includes her attending monthly meetings, learning about additional resources, and writing an action plan that will result in increased test scores for our students with disabilities. We also are providing after-school tutoring and a more focused daily intervention time. Although our PARCC data does not show significant increase in the performance levels for our students with disabilities, we do have NWEA MAP data, which shows that our students with disabilities are making progress at a rate that is above the national norm at almost every grade level. In addition, and this is the data that Laura has already sent to you, and in addition, you can see by this data that our students are progressing at a much higher rate in reading than math. And this is also the case for our general education students, which is why math is a priority area for all students. We have added math intervention teachers and tutors to our team, whose role is solely to improve our students' performance in math. And finally, I want to share that I am very proud of the work we started last year as a staff on understanding institutional racism and identity development. This school year, I created the position of Director of Equity and Anti-Racism and moved my very talented social studies teacher into this position. We have become a more inclusive environment, much of which is also due to the student leadership of our Free to Be Me Club and our recently formed Kindness Committee. This focus has pushed us to an even higher level of school culture that is conducive to the learning and development of all our incredible scholars. And speaking of incredible scholars, I would now like to introduce you to one of them, Makai.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little nervous about speaking tonight, so I've prepared a speech that I'm going to read to you now. My name is Makai, and I am a 6th grader at City Springs Elementary Middle School. Since pre-K, City Springs has provided me with the tools to succeed. In addition to learning, City Springs has also offered me the opportunity to play basketball, and this year, I joined the debate team. City Springs is not only my school, but my family. I've gained lifelong mentors, coaches, and role models who are always there to push me to achieve my goals. I want to take this time to thank my principal, Dr. Aketa, for teaching us that purple is not just a color, but an attitude. The teachers I've had at City Springs, starting with my pre-K teacher to all my 6th grade teachers now, all have been role models, taught me a lot, and made me feel safe and loved. I want to thank them too. If you have never visited City Springs, you should come one day. I think you will love it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Makai.
Back to you, Commissioner Richardson.
Okay, great. Thank you, Makai, for that great presentation. I really enjoyed you. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions?
Great job, Makai. They weren't playing fair, but that was great job.
Thank you.
Great job and good luck. Not good luck, congratulations, right? Making the debate team. That's really, really cool. Can we stop sharing this screen? Because I kind of see myself. Hi, Jeanette. Do you see yourself? Okay, there we go. We're going to take this down.
I'm trying. There we go. There we go.
There we go. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Always a pleasure. I don't see any hands raised for city neighbors. I want to ask one more time. Any questions while we have them? All right, no questions, Angela.
All right, but you meant City Springs, but yeah. Thank you, guys. Can we bring City Neighbors Hamilton back up?
Yes, and Catherine Drayton-Barber from City Neighbors Charter can present for us because she was successful the last time. So she's ready to cue it up. Thank you.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, good evening. My name is Dana Jackson, proud parent of Peyton Spruill, 6th grader at City Neighbors and the Vice President of the City Neighbors Board of Directors. I'm here tonight representing our parent-led Board of Directors and joined by LaShawn Gardner, 1st grade teacher, Charlotte Rao, our fearless principal, and Mike Chalupa, Director of the City Neighbors Foundation. CNH is in its 13th year as an arts integrated project-based public charter school here in Baltimore, and we are proud of the school that we have created. Having navigated the most challenging times in the last 2 years, the CNH community banded together and supported each other. Our students stayed connected with above 95% attendance rates during virtual learning, while our teachers adapted to create high-quality virtual learning, and our students showed marked academic progress despite their challenges. We are now all back, and even with mass pool testing and the challenges of returning from isolation, we are thriving and strong than ever.
My apologies for the camera being off. I realized I've been texting, my folks have been texting saying that it's the wrong way. So anyone who visits CNH sees the quality of the student experience. On the district school effectiveness review, our school scored highly effective or effective for all parts of the visit, and we are pleased to regularly welcome 21st Century Schools, other schools, and partner institutions like Morgan State who come to learn. CNH is in high demand and people stay. Our student cohort retention rate was nearly 95% with a 90% teacher retention rate, and our chronic absence rates hover around 7% across all grades. Historically, over 60% of our graduates attend Baltimore City criteria schools, and while nearly 3 years old, our last PARCC scores show effective and highly effective trends in middle school, while students in all subgroups outscored the district on average from 2017 to 2019. We are a strong, innovative public school choice for students and families, but we are clear on where we need to grow and are always in the tough work of getting even better.
City Neighbors Hamilton has been in the hard work of meaningful ongoing growth and improvement. We developed a school-wide scope and sequence and developed educational programming that is rooted in the standards responsive to student data with synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities. After reviewing PARCC and internal data in 2018, we identified a need for deep and sustained focus on equitable and inclusive practices at CNH. We invested in a multi-year equity consultant, conducted an in-depth equity audit, created a 3-year equity plan, revised our curriculum planning tools, changed our data practices, and so much more. Starting in 2018, we also worked to create a multi-tiered approach to academic intervention, including the investment of intervention teachers, training for teachers in level literacy instruction in Orton Gillingham, daily intensive blocks in grades 3 through 8, and summer and after-school programming and tutoring. We realized that we aren't able to do the work of equitable and inclusive practice without employing a truly restorative mindset as a school. Starting in 2018, we conducted ongoing staff-wide training in restorative practices, invested in full-time social work and full-time staff person to hold restorative practice efforts, invested in our advisory model and social emotional learning efforts. The results of these efforts are becoming clear. Early signs include on 2021 iReady assessments, our 8th graders scored at the Tier 1 level 33 points higher in reading and 31 points higher in math than in 2019. We've reduced suspensions to nearly zero between 2017 and 2020, with 0 suspensions for students with disabilities. We have flipped the racial demographics of our teaching staff from 58% white in 2017 to 54% teachers of color today. We are excited to be in this difficult but profound work of making our strong community even stronger and more equitable.
If you were to take a walk through our building today, you would see evidence of high quality work and meaningful learning experiences. First graders are currently deep in a project on endangered animals, examining the contributing factors to answer the question, can we prevent extinction? Third graders are gaining scientific and conceptual knowledge of space, investigating what is beyond the stars. And 8th graders are researching historical upstanders in our society in their Heroes and Villains project. You can find work like this in every classroom and at every grade level. We are a dynamic place of learning and growing for teachers, students, and community members. We invite you to visit our campus at any time to see our work in action. And we also hope to see you at our Progressive Ed Summit in January, where we convene with hundreds of educators and leaders from across the city, region, and nation. Thank you for the opportunity to share about our school and for the opportunity to continue this work together.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from my board colleagues? Okay, I don't see, wait a minute. Did you raise your hand? Did I see a hand? Oh, Chantel, you're on mute.
Apologies, my hand wouldn't go up. Good evening, City Neighbors Hamilton. I would be really interested in your previous renewal report. There was a note around the gap, the performance gap of African American students and white students as they performed on the PARCC during your previous renewal summary. I would be really interested to see how we see that reflected in this year's renewal report. Seeing as though it was slightly over 30 percentage points that was quite significant at the last renewal period. I'd be really interested to see where we saw a shift in that this renewal season.
Okay. Okay. Mike, are you taking this one?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had it, Shyla. Hi, Commissioner Roberts. How are you? I think the data from 2019 is still mixed in that area. We do see African American students over the course of the time outscore the district, but the gap still remains, and that really prompted a lot of the work that we talked about in the presentation starting in 2018. So that is when we went about the work of building the equity team, investing in professional development and leadership coaching for all of us here, doing targeted grouping, really working on intervention structures, all of the things that we're starting to see results from. So in the internal data, since we don't have data since 2019, PARCC data, in internal data, for instance, we see by third grade, there is no achievement gap in reading for the last group of students by the end of third grade. Or we see in iReady by 8th grade, significant gains across all subgroups at that point. So we don't have PARCC data since 2019, since almost 3 years ago, to show some of that growth. But we have been really deep in that work all the way through this time period.
Thank you, Mr. Chalupa. And one other question would just be around the effective programming for students with disabilities. That's also an area where the rating dropped from effective to developing. So if you all could speak to that this evening.
Sure. So from our understanding, we received developing for 2 reasons. Our PARCC test scores from 2017-19, despite students with disabilities outscoring the district, didn't show sufficient progress. So we've done a lot since then, including investing in additional special education staffing and all of the things that you've seen in terms of interventions in the presentation tonight, and which we put in our renewal report. So that was one piece. And then the other piece was that there was some misunderstanding in a piece of IEP implementation. So while students received all of the services and more required by the IEP, we sometimes provided services in integrated subject times, like our project-based learning blocks, when the IEP specifically said literacy or math. So that some of this, that was caught in the audit that was done as part of this renewal process. We've met with families, we've rectified that. We were certainly all along meeting in good faith to meet the spirit of the IEP, but we've made those corrections since then to make sure that that's not a problem going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chalupa. Madam Chair, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was working on unmute. Are there any other questions from my board colleagues? I don't see any hands, so thank you so much, City Neighbors Hamilton, for coming out tonight. Angela, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. I'm going to invite Connections, a community-based art school, up.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, and I'm not particularly sure if this is too big of an ask, but a number of the schools this evening have made a reference to outperforming the district or outperforming traditional schools. And I would really just like to hear more specificity around that data that they're speaking about with intentionality. I just want to put that on the table. We're all one district. So when there are comments made around outperforming other schools that are part of the same district, I'm really troubled by that. So I need more context to what that comment actually is referencing, because it's quite disparaging.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Roberts, for all of our schools that are going to be presenting. If you all could keep that in mind, if your data that you're presenting, quote, outperforms the district, then kind of give us more, color that in a little bit more for us to let us know what what you mean in that instance. And I just would like to tag on to that and say one of the wonderful. I'm sorry, someone needs to mute. Someone needs to mute. Okay. One of the wonderful gifts of having charters in our system is that we get to do some learning as well, right? And so if you've uncovered strategies that are really successful, one of the things that we want to do is do some learning from those strategies as a full district, to Commissioner Roberts' point. So we're going to allow Connections to start their presentation, keeping those things in mind. Thank you.
Very good. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Dr. Santelises. We are exceedingly proud and happy to be able to present to you today. I am joined by several members of our school community, and they will introduce themselves if time permits. One of the things that I'd like to point out about Connections before I turn it over to the principal, we are a community-based arts school, but we are also very steeped in the core value of teaching and learning. And so with that said, I would like Mr. Brooks to take it away.
Good evening, Dr. Santelises and Madam Chair. Commissioner Roberts couldn't have said it any better of what I was thinking. I scratched anything that I wanted to say about presentation. Tonight, I said this, I was blessed to have Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Chinya critique and visit and put a different set of eyes on this work, which I'm appreciative of. We realize that we sing and dance well. We've done that for almost 20 years. Our kids are artistic geniuses. And I know if they can do that work artistically, both in person and as they did virtually, that they can succeed on any standardized assessments. And they've shown it in their map data. I sent data over and PowerPoints over and information and data points. And I recognize and own that we have to get better at figuring out how to get them to perform and move the needle on the standardized assessments. And we're equipped to do that. We've changed our structure. We've put systems and processes in place, from hiring a data coordinator, instructional coaches to help build teacher capacity, to make sure that we provide students with what they need to perform on their standardized assessments. I think for me, what Commissioner Roberts asked me, how did I feel about the renewal? And it resonated with me on my ride home after a visit. And I'm like, we have nowhere to go but up after this. One thing the pandemic did was at least almost try to attempt to equal the playing field, whether it be through technology, being able to upgrade the Wi-Fi, the things that were frustrating my students when it came to taking those standardized assessments. We can now begin to take that excuse away and really do the work that we need to do to see students move that needle. We're really looking at student data on a daily basis. We're working in teacher teams. We built collaborative planning time in for teachers to be able to look at student data in order to know how we need to group students when it comes to getting them to just get over that edge, because we have a lot of kids that are sitting on that mark that can move the needle, to show that our kids can do this work. And I know that they can. We're a safe space. We've always been a safe space. We have a high number, a high SWD population, which we welcome. We've increased our citywide program here in enrollment. Our enrollment increases every year. And we know that we do the culture piece well, and it's just time to get to work, whether it be I need to collaborate with other leaders, charter or traditional, to figure out who's doing what and what it works, and getting with those leaders to figure out what we need to do as a community to show growth. And we're up for the challenge. So I'm thankful for the renewal, but I understand with the work that comes along with that. One of the things that stood out to me when I assumed leadership here, and I've been here teaching since 2005, was that the school was built on teacher voice. And for a long time, teachers had a lot of autonomy to do what they wanted to do. And one of the things that Dr. S said when I first assumed leadership, that is, if you haven't proved that you can do it your way and do it right, then you need to align to something. And we did that. We invested in the core curriculum with the district, and we're just trying to move the needle. Our kids can do it. I believe it, and I'm thankful, and I'm anxious to dive into this work to do better.
Thank you, Principal Brooks. we can move on to the commissioners' questions now.
Madam Chair Richardson had to step away, but I did have a remark that I wanted to share. I did, alongside Commissioner Chinya, we both had the opportunity to visit the Connection School community this week, and it was a great school visit. I think one thing that you did not share with the commissioners and those in attendance tonight, Principal Brooks, was around your operator capacity and including a new data specialist for your school communities as an intentional effort or resource to help see advancements in your student performance. Could you speak to that for the commissioners that are present tonight?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We did hire a full-time data coordinator whose sole responsibility is to not only just look at the data, but go in, observe classrooms, attend team meetings, do data coaching with not just teachers, but also with students. You know, I think that's the work. You know, we hear data and we fear it, and I think, you know, having a data coordinator who knows the numbers, who knows how to then take the numbers and apply it to and give teachers real live applications that they can take back to the instructional practices is nothing but a plus. And so, you know, that's one of the biggest steps that we made. And thank you, Commissioner Roberts, for reminding me to include that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Were there any other questions? I see a hand. Is that you, Commissioner Reed?
Yeah. Yes.
You can go ahead.
Great presentation, sir. Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry. I guess you articulated the fact that you were thanking us for the 3-year renewal. You haven't passed muster yet. We don't vote for about another month or so. I guess my point is, you did also articulate the fact that no way but up in terms of the performance going forward. But I have reason to pause because I'm really concerned about the achievement growth and the numbers you have in terms of career and college readiness. Based on the data I've gotten from staff, those numbers aren't good. I had some really talented colleagues, a lot more talented than I am, who visit your school. But how can I be comfortable coming in a month from now saying this school's good enough to give a 3-year contract?
And that's an excellent question, Commissioner Reed. I think when I look into the weeds of that, I think there's a lot that's unclear. I mean, we had a 13% jump in our graduation rate. We've increased our AP offerings, which you and I both know give students a better opportunity. We now offer AP Stats, AP Lit, AP Lang, and I have some of those teachers on. We offer AP Music Theory as well as an AP Spanish class, which my assistant principal taught during virtual learning. And so we put measures in place. We're making sure we're increasing our college visits. We're making sure that we increase the number of applications that our students submit every year. I have some students who are actually, Commissioner Reed, I don't know if they're on. I know they were trying to log on. 3 who matriculated here. 2 are at Coppin, one's graduating, one just graduated from Bowie. All 3 I have here working as tutors to help do the work that you're speaking of. We have students in middle school taking and exposing them to the PSAT. We're making sure exposing our middle grades to collegiate and college visits as well. Bringing the colleges to us, but also going to visit the colleges, and just that being part of the everyday conversation in all our classes, Commissioner Reed.
Commissioner Roberts, I just have one more question. It's a selfish question.
Nope, sir.
Why,
no problem.
Why did you guys pick statistics in terms of the math?
That's a great, the teacher that we have and that drives our math department that's what he chose, and that's what he wanted, because just of what just how our students' math brains are. I'm not a math brain, Commissioner Reed, and so it was one of the questions I had as well. But it's what I gave the autonomy to him to pick what he wanted to do as far as AP, and he chose statistics based on what he was seeing from middle school data as well as our high school data. Great question. Thank you, Commissioner Reed.
I believe your time is up, Principal Brooks, and to the rest of the Connection school community. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next we're going to bring up Creative City Public Charter School. And just as a reminder, only the board, the CEO, and Creative City, people who are with Creative City's camera should be on, no other people.
Good evening, Creative City.
Good evening.
Good evening. We are going to share our screen, and in the meantime, I'll just say good evening and thank you for having us here. I'm Marisa Canino. I'm the Executive Director here at Creative City Public Charter School. I'm also the parent of a Creative City graduate and a Creative City fourth grader and a Creative City first grader. I'm joined tonight by Principal Tracy Mathena, who is going to be sharing the screen that we're both on, and by our board chair, Amy Harmon-Darrow. After our presentation, we'll be available for questions, obviously, but I want to make a note that we've pre-recorded the narration of our presentation so we can make sure we stay tight on time. So we're going to go ahead and play that.
Our goals tonight are to provide concrete examples of how our instructional practice has improved since we last presented to you, and to share specific evidence of our instruction and data analysis. When we select curriculum materials, we engage our community, ensure mission alignment, and review ESSA evidence. Here you see a list of curricula and interventions currently used at our school, along with their adoption date and their status in our internal review cycle. Everything is connected in our curriculum, from the year-long curriculum mats to the daily lesson plans. Skills-based lessons come from our selected curriculum materials and from projects that extend and apply content knowledge. In our supplemental package, we have provided examples. What you see on this slide is a general arc of how instructional projects unfold. Please note that multiple assessment points we developed to help us isolate the specific impact that our project-based and arts integrated strategies have on student learning. Everything is connected in our curriculum, from the year-long curriculum mats to the daily lesson plans. Skills-based lessons come from our selected curriculum materials and from projects that We just got word that our audio was not working. I needed to check to see whether there's something here that we're supposed to do when we share content to also share audio.
I can hear your audio.
Yeah, it's working.
Oh.
It was working.
Oh, but it's working.
I am so sorry. I had two different text messages saying that our audio is not working.
My apologies. I'm going to go back to where it needs to go. I'm sorry. Did someone say they were
try to go back where you
It's
cut off?
extremely low.
Yep.
What you see on this slide is a general arc of how instructional projects unfold. Please note that multiple assessment points we developed to help us isolate the specific impact that our project-based and arts integrated strategies have on student learning. In 5th grade, students learned about Earth's major systems. The curriculum is Discovery Science, and the project is tied to Next Generation Science and Maryland Fine Arts Standards. Students photographed examples of the Earth's major systems on campus and wrote descriptions that linked to their learning. Here is a response from a student which ends with, "I see an interaction between the biosphere and the geosphere when the kids are running on the ground. The grass is growing in the soil of the geosphere."
We know our historic data and we know it needs to improve. We began to redesign our data collection and analysis systems in 2019. This fall, we resumed this work, and the result is the data cycle summarized here. We're pleased to have thoroughly addressed our weaknesses in data analysis, which were identified in our SER and renewal report. The data cycle is in use in all contents, and we have one example here. We began with school-wide use of the Acadience Math Screening Tool. We moved to analysis with our instructional leadership team, interventionists, and grade level teams. Math computation skills needed attention school-wide. Action steps included developing intervention pullout groups, in-class small groups, and daily computation fluency strategies implemented in all classrooms. Additional diagnostics identified specific gaps, and instructional adjustments occurred as we regrouped students. Full school reassessment with Acadience is the last step. We already see evidence of success. The chart on the left shows beginning of year computation data where 72% of students were well below benchmark. Now, 47% are still well below, but 20% are above. We know the data-driven strategy is working. Our available data sets this contract period were limited. We've expanded our look at data to include beginning of year iReady scores for Creative City students who have moved on to middle school. So far, we've analyzed iReady data from Baltimore Design School, which received 19% of our fifth graders last year. We not only looked at beginning of year in grade 6, we also looked back to their specific performance on the 18-19 MCAT test when they were in the 3rd grade. We see that this specific subgroup of students performed below their district peers in both MCAP domains in the 3rd grade. By contrast, they've surpassed their BDS grade 6 peers in both domains on their beginning of year assessments. Creative City has experienced significant achievement at the beginning of this current school year alone. Coupled with the strong marks we received in our renewal report in governance and finance, we hope that the information you've received tonight will allow you to develop an updated view of Creative City's overall success.
Okay, Commissioner Roberts, back to you. You're muted.
Thank you. I actually have 2 questions that do not relate to the academics overall rating. My first question would be around the audit content or the internal controls. That was an area that you all, we saw a rating decrease from your 2007 renewal report to developing. Could you speak to that? And then my second question would be around your effective programming for students with disabilities, where we saw an increase from not effective to developing. In that space, I'm assuming that you'd be able to speak to the success that you've seen in moving it forward into increasing your rating, but not quite at an effective. So those 2 areas would be for my question.
Yep. So let me address the question about audit, and then I'll turn to Ms. Mathena for the question about students with disabilities. My understanding of the developing rating in the financial management had to do with our assets, our net assets decreasing from the previous year to the most recent year. And so taking a broader look, we have done a tremendous amount of work in building up our cash reserves over the entire contract period. We went from running a really tight margin and having to make sure we had a line of credit just in case a few years ago, to now having more than 6 months of our cash reserves always on hand, and being able to have the flexibility to borrow from our cash reserves for special projects if needed, so long as we maintain the minimum cash reserve threshold that our board of directors has put in place. And so what I think has happened in the interpretation is that there was a note that we had borrowed from our cash reserves, let me see, 2 budget cycles ago, to fund a specific priority within our budget. And so the net assets declined rather than steadily increasing. And we contest that we had built up enough strength that we really had the flexibility to use those assets in the way that was best for students. I hope that answers your question about that developing rating. Is it okay if we go on to your question about students with disabilities?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening to everyone. Tracy Mathena. I obviously am not happy with a developing rating in that, but I'm very happy that it is not ineffective. We made very intentional decisions to change some of the modeling that we were doing with our special education. We moved from a case management special education model where our current special educators were the ones that were running their teams and making sure that all the notes were out and things like that, to an ITA model where we now have somebody who's responsible for all of those types of things. It happened when we had an increase in our special education population, and then an ITA is a person who leads your team meetings and things like that. And so by having our special educators be able to focus primarily on all of the instructional, academic, and provisions for their students, it took away that extra piece, and I believe was able to help our students, obviously, by having more time with their special educators. In addition to that, we had at one point not had a self-contained class, and we ended up developing one as the needs arose when IEP meetings turned up, the different students moved from LRE A and B to LRE C. And being able to have a dually certified in general education and special education teacher teach that class, we now have students who are able to get the best of both worlds in instruction. So I feel like there have been a lot of intentional things that we are doing to try to move things forward. Obviously, we're not where we need to be, but I believe as we continue to do things such as we have one of our special educators who's also in the special education instructional leadership program this year, and he is working with all of us to be able to up our program. I know that we're going to be able to move that forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Thanks for stepping in for me. I really appreciate that. Angela, we'll take it back to you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Reed's hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. I'm sorry. I apologize, Commissioner Reed.
Oh, no apology needed. Ladies, I looked at I guess your 2017 review, and then I looked at the one just now for this 2021. Over the course of a 4-year period, I guess in terms of the academics, it's a little mixed, but net, you've gone from developing to not effective. So what was the reasoning and the problems that caused the slippage? Because I'm really, it's concerning to me. Because I tend to focus on the academic, and it's not effective.
A lot of our, I believe a lot of the things that were talked about in our academics from this last renewal period had to do with our ability to talk around how we are actually implementing instruction. Are we actively using data to inform our instruction to move things forward? And we recognized that that was a place where we were not using data as effectively as we needed to. We recognized that at the last renewal period and started putting things into place in order to rectify that. I will say I'm not using it as an excuse, but it certainly is a reason. A lot of the things that we started had to be halted during the pandemic. Not able to do a lot of the things in person, having to change some of the data work that we were going to be doing with staff. Things did definitely change that sort of put a halt to it. But as soon as we were able to return, we resumed all of that, which is one of the things we just presented now, so that we are back on track being able to implement, look at our data, and truly understand what is going on with our students to be able to implement the strategies needed to move them forward. Again, the renewal that we had in 2017-18, at that time, we were recognizing what needed to happen to change, and we were putting things in place. I am, again, not satisfied, obviously, with a not effective rating in our SER this year, but we have truly made all kinds of changes in order to start that process again. And I think we've just shown that we are seeing the benefits of all of that. We will be moving it forward.
You're talking strategies and tactics, but I guess the end game for me is grades. So how are they doing on the test, and what's that trend line look like?
On when you say grades, are we talking report card grades?
I'm talking about academic in terms of Park scores and other scores. I mean, how are they doing there?
Well, the last time that we, I believe, had Park scores, or no, we never took MCAP. Well, they took the was 18-19, and those were the ones that were discussed in the last presentation that we just gave. We've shown that the students that, including the ones that are in 6th grade now, when they were 3rd grade, they took those the Park test, and they did not perform very well in regard to Park. But they have demonstrated that now, at where they are, having continued with Creative City and now moved into middle school, that they are now performing above their grade level peers at present. And I believe that when we take our next assessment, when we do our Maryland, our MCAPs, that I believe that we will show improvement.
And just to, if I may, I don't want to take too much time, but to add on to what Ms. Mathena was saying, we share your concern about the, specifically the absolute student achievement and the student achievement growth that came up not effective in our rating rubric.
Yes.
We didn't have the full, it's understandable, none of us did, but we as well didn't have the full arc of data that would have been available during our contract period. Therefore, we started to really think outside the box, and we've begun an analysis process of looking at our 5th graders' beginning of year iReady score in their 6th grade. That is a process because we have a data request pending with OAA, so we can do a more comprehensive analysis. And right now we're going school by school to do this data inquiry, starting with the schools that have received the largest numbers of our students. And so what Ms. Mathena referred to was a subgroup analysis we did of our 5th graders who moved on to 6th grade. They're 6th graders this year. We have their 3rd grade MCAP scores because it was the last time we had a standardized data point that's included here in this report. And we were able to show, just for that subgroup, but we're expanding the analysis, that they grew at a rate that seems faster than their peers from across the city. So we acknowledge that it's a small data set and we're growing it, but we're committed to fleshing out the entire data set and would be very happy to share it with you as that goes along. But we recognize that we're not showing the growth, so we're looking for alternate data points we can grab to try to complete the arc because the arc was interrupted.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions from my fellow board commissioners? Okay, I don't see any more hands. Commissioner Reed, could you lower your hand so that we don't get confused? Thank you so much. Angela, now I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, guys. The next school that is going to come up is Elmer A. Henderson, Johns Hopkins Partnership School.
Wonderful. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Dr. Santelises. This evening and share a little bit of our successes at Henderson Hopkins and a lot of the work that we still need to do. My name again is Peter Canham, proud principal for the last 4 years, and I am joined by Dean Christopher Morphew from Johns Hopkins School of Education, and J.D. Merrill, my assistant principal. So first and foremost, I'm really proud of the fact that Henderson Hopkins is on the move. While we have lots of work to do and we're focused on it, to becoming an exemplary school for all of our students, our data shows that we're making progress. I always believe parents will let you know they're very good judges of their own school. We right now have a 96% family school satisfaction. Students are staying. We have an average 5-year retention rate of 81%. We strategically added pre-K, working in partnership with the district, and a middle school honors cohort. We were losing lots of our students during middle school's choice. Now they're staying because the academic rigor is there. we have many more spots and applications than spots available. You can see the trend line below of how we've been growing in the past year. Academics, our school is creating conditions for our students to achieve rapid academic improvement. Out of the 12 categories of academic achievement, absolute achievement, student trend, and student growth from our renewal report, we scored highly effective on 8, effective on 2, 1 developing, and 2 not effective. And I'm going to speak specifically about the not effective and developing, which is in middle school mathematics. Our African-American students performed 4th in ELA and 6th in math in 2019 in Baltimore City schools. And our data indicates that economically disadvantaged students are achieving at the same improvement rate as their other peers at Henderson Hopkins, which is something we're proud of. We really take our role as a community school seriously. We have become a site for food distribution. Food insecurity was a real big deal. When the pandemic hit, we knew we had to respond. We were the #1 meal distribution site in city schools, but then we also partnered with the Maryland Food Bank and have given out, you can see how many thousand pounds of food, 60,000 masks, and 20,000 families have come to our school to receive food. We've had 8 vaccination clinics. And we really felt like during the pandemic, we had to respond with a student learning center. So we secured a grant, opened our doors the first day of school, and had 200 students attending for the year with internet and food at our school throughout the year last year. And while we are pleased with our progress, we've got lots of work to do. This work is, we're not satisfied of where we are. Middle school mathematics is a huge focus of our school. We've dug in, hired highly effective math teachers. We've expanded our math instructional block to include intervention. We have targeted mathematics coaching and professional development. Like I said, we added an honors cohort, and now we have algebra. We're going to be offering it next year and getting our students ready now, our 7th graders. We're really leaning in on effective programming for students with disabilities. We hired a new IEP chair, a full-time IEP chair, and added a classroom instructor already. And now we're going to continue to grow a team of special educators, and we're going to move to a fully inclusive model where students are receiving as many of the services they possibly can in the general educational classroom. And we're training our teachers now to transition to that model for next year. Training on the universal design for learning. We did receive a developing and audit content and internal controls, and I want to explain that. We now own our building. We have no more interest to pay, and we have a strong short-term liquidity. The reason why there was an imbalance that gave us a developing is the debt we took on in 2013 to build our building was through a new market tax credit, which has now been fully forgiven, and we essentially unwound it. The debt was entirely forgiven. The building is now ours. It's counted as a $54 million in-kind gift, and so that's why on our audit, it's a one-time occurrence, but we're in a very strong financial shape owning the building. We have a great firm that does our audits, and we have a strong financial team with Johns Hopkins School of Education with full-time professionals helping us, and a strong finance committee with our board. So just in conclusion, before I take questions, we've really dug in. We talk a lot about joy and passion at our school. And for the commissioners who come and visited, we are a school that's academically rigorous, but we can do this work with joy and passion and love. And we have a lot of work to do to become the exemplary school we aspire and what our kids deserve. And we're going to keep working really hard at it.